Hey guys, it's Sean, and I am here to tell you guys that we do not have a new episode of ReelBlend happening this week. The guys are torn in a million different directions, and we have a whole bunch of hashtag if it happens interview opportunities coming up, and so we're juggling schedules and trying to make sure that we get a ton of really great content to you guys. But in lieu of a new episode, as we mentioned last week, we wanted you guys to watch Barb and Star because we have the director of that new comedy, Josh Greenbaum, who came on the show and is going to dive into spoilers. If you haven't seen Barb and Star yet, first off, that means you didn't listen to us. You didn't do your homework. So go watch that right now. Then come back and listen to this episode because we dive into all of the irregularities that came with putting this movie together. Obviously, it's nothing like the trailer and the marketing. And once we got to see it, we knew immediately that we had to have Josh on the ReelBlend podcast. And so we're thrilled to get him. We think that if you guys saw the movie, you're going to love this conversation. And so without further ado, the ReelBlend interview with Josh Greenbaum, the director of Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar. All right, so I will kick us off, but I want to begin with saying that knowing how much Kristen and Annie as comedians like to build off of each other and construct a joke and maybe go in different directions based on something that someone has said, how different is this movie from, say, like Table Read to Final Cut?
It's a great question. I mean, here's something that might surprise you is most comedies, I think, are open to, you do a lot of improvisation. And we certainly did that a lot. But what's sort of unique is because Kristen and Annie are both the writers and the performers, they have worked out, and we had together worked out the script in such a way that by the time we were shooting, there was less improv than you might normally think on a normal film. So that's not to say it didn't happen. It happened all the time. I mean, you can't stop Kristen and Annie from coming up with new jokes and improvising. And a scene is never really finished. You just run out of time and you move on to the next one. But yeah, I mean, when I came on board, the script was so funny and bananas and quite long. And so, it's always a bummer, but you're always cutting things out, mostly for time, not for jokes. So it did change a lot from, I would say, sort of first table read to what we shot. But on set, it was less of that, like, hey, here's my packet of alt jokes that we've come up with and constantly throwing out new stuff. Because I think they were so, we all felt really great with where we landed through the process.
Josh, I found it super interesting in this sense that the movie I'm about to bring up, I don't think these films are the same. I think they're very, very different. I think you already probably know what I'm going to mention, but when you have a comedy that has a sci-fi element, and I mentioned Palm Springs because it also had a sci-fi element to it, but it was a completely different movie. The difference between those two films, though, in the trailers were that Palm Springs trailer gave away the bit. In the trailer, your film does not. And so for me, when I sat down to watch your movie, I was genuinely blown away by the way it went. So I wanted to ask about that choice. Is that a choice made on your part? Is it a choice made on Kristen and Annie's part? Because I feel like it's one of those moves where, like, yeah, you want to get people to come watch your movie, but you don't want to tell them the bit. So like, I'm wondering kind of where that balance is for you.
Yeah, it's I'm sorry, my emails, if they're dinging.
It's okay.
That's a great question. Let me see if I can figure out. Do you guys didn't do that? Let me try option. There we go. Option. Done.
Option
Nice.
did it.
Okay. Sorry. I don't know if you're editing this, so I apologize for that. I just realized
we're keeping that in. We're keeping it in.
Okay, good. And that ding, if you guys want to know, that ding was from Kristen. So it's
okay.
Can you read what she wrote, please?
Yes, I'll read it out loud. No, it's a great question, Kevin, and it's something we discussed a lot, which is, there's a lot of fun surprises in the movie. And I think we were always conscious of, like, how much do we tell you? One of my favorite things as a moviegoer is going in blind. I love that feeling of, like, I don't really know what this is about. I think it's why film festival experiences are so wonderful, is because there's just no way to know anything about what you're about to watch. And so we obviously want to try to protect that feeling and that experience for people. But also at the same time, we know we have to get people aware of the film and give them enough to feel like, I want to go see that. So I think with every film, in your marketing and your publicity, it's always a dance. I hope we're doing the right dance at the moment. Because as you said, Kevin, the first 5 minutes of the film are really nothing like anything that we're marketing. And so I like that, but I hope, I hope that it's not so jarring, and by the way, one of the things was great is when we first met with Lionsgate about making this movie, we all know, like, yes, it's from the creators of Bridesmaids, the writers of Bridesmaids, but this is not Bridesmaids 2. And we just want to make sure we all are on the same page. And Lionsgate from the very beginning was like, yeah, we understand that. Of course, we're going to make people aware that this is from great comedic minds like Kristen and Annie, but it's not Bridesmaids 2, as you guys have pointed out.
We talk often on the show about, we just missed the days when you would go to a theater and see a trailer for a movie that you had no clue was coming, and you were just like, what? They made another one of those? Like, that's so exciting. Yeah. So this was a really great throwback to that. And
Josh, we have literally been texting back and forth about this being one of the funniest films we've seen in a long time. Like I've watched this twice, and it's on a screener. I've watched it twice, and I'm like, it's like my new spirit animal. I love this movie so much. But Sean, go ahead.
I love hearing that. That's amazing. Thank you. Amazing. I mean, it's funny because I'm the director of the film, but I have the same feeling because when I first came on board, the way this all came about is I had made a movie called Becoming Bond, which is a documentary, but it has a kind of narrative element to it. And I didn't know it at the time, but Kristen Wiig was in the audience of a screening I had of that film. Jessica Elbaum, the producer of Barb and Star, had brought her. The movie ends and Kristen walks up and says, "Oh my God, I love this film. We need to work together." And I'm such a huge fan of hers. I'm totally starstruck. And I'm also like, that must just be a Hollywood thing. Like you say, like, hey, I want to work with you. And then that's it.
Yeah.
Anyway, a couple of days later, I'm sitting at lunch with her and she's pitching me what the movie you just watched, but like the entire movie from the first scene to the last. She's playing all the characters. And I just remember this experience of, first of all, it was the greatest lunch I've ever had. But it's also like, if our film can deliver what she just pitched me, like what a great just return to like comedy with a capital C. It's it just felt so passionate and different than what's been made in the last couple decades, or decade at least, and so I'm so thrilled to hear you say that. I've
never seen anything like it. Now, that's what I will tell you right now. I've never seen anything like that. Yeah,
a touchstone I kept going back to in my mind is like a MacGruber. Like one of those movies where you just you will quote constally.
Yeah.
For the absurdity of it all.
Well, one of the things. So Kristen, when we first met at that lunch, I think at one point I asked her sort of what touchstones are in her mind as they were writing it. And it, to some extent, I love, it's like when you ask a band, like, hey, what genre are you? And the band's always like, I don't want to be pigeonholed into this one thing.
Yeah.
But she did say, it's sort of Romeo and Michelle's high school reunion, which is one thing. But then, and I love that film. And then she said meets Airplane. And that's where I was like, what is this? Like, what? I don't even know what that means, where you cross over these films. But I think for those of you who have seen it, when people see it, it makes more sense. You're like, yeah, there's like these absurdist elements that you just don't see coming, that zig and then zag and then But of course at the center of it, and why part of what was the attraction and why Romeo and Michelle is a relevant reference, is there is a sweet friendship at the center of it, and I think we all can relate to that and appreciate it.
So there's an element, it's weird to say this, but Florida is an actual character in your film. And I'm from the Southeast. I'm in North Carolina right now. And we treat Florida like the butt of a joke. Like we lampoon it often. And it's very easy to lampoon Florida, but I feel like you guys went out of your way to go after other things that are really funny about it. Can you just talk about your approach to finding what's kind of funny about Florida and how you utilized it?
Yeah, I mean, I think like, and Kristen can speak to it very specifically because like her mom lives there now and sort of on the Panhandle side, and
which is its own unique animal, by the way.
It is. And I think there's this sort of element of, I mean, it's always true of any comedy where there's a degree of like, yeah, there's some poking fun, but there's also sort of this celebrating, right? There's a reason why you're attracted to tell certain stories, because there's something about them that, appeal to you. Like your reference of MacGruber, like it's not just like, oh, MacGyver's so dumb, let's make fun of it. It's like, I kind of love MacGyver and I watched it like crazy, so that's why I want to make this film. Yeah. Similarly, I think there's just something so kind of specific and unique about aspects of Florida that I know when Kristen and Annie were writing the script, they were drawn to. But just the idea also of it being like a middle-aged Nirvana, I just loved. It just, it's specifically Vista Del Mar, because it's not Miami, clearly. Yeah. But it's also not like, as Mickey Reveille, Wendy McLendon-Covey's character says, it's not that sort of spring break, she says, where the girls are out there with their to tatas, I believe she said. Maybe that's in the takes. So many hot takes. I have a hard time remembering what's still in there. But no, it was absolutely. I think you said it well, Sean. It was always going to be a character of the film, and it's in the title. Vista Del Mar.
Yeah. Josh, there's a shot in this film, so I told you I've seen it twice, and I'm like blown away. It almost looks like you did a double dolly, where they have the buried treasure, and I still want to get into Jamie Dornan at some point because I think it's the best thing he's ever been involved in. Because I think you finally tapped into something that he's a brilliant comedian. He really is. He is. But that particular sequence was incredible, and I wanted to ask about how you shot that. So set it up for our audience briefly. There's a moment you've seen in the trailer where they exchange their room numbers, and there's like a whole bit about that. And then they drink something that sends them into a alcoholic, drug-induced daze, essentially. Then they float back from the bar. How did you achieve that shot? It's an amazing shot.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's done practically. So I'm a big fan of doing everything as practically as if we can, because there's something about it. There's a texture to it. You just know it. You know when something's really shot that way. And I think VFX have come so far, but there's always that feeling like, I don't quite believe this. I think so what we did is we built, along with our incredible DP, Toby Oliver, who shot Get Out, which I know is maybe not the most obvious choice for our film, but I can get into why later, and he was incredible. Wow. We built essentially, like you said, it's just a floating platform where we actually remade the bar. There's a real bar in that hotel, and then we remade it with the same countertop. And we sat the three actors on this platform, but we also put the camera on the platform. And then our 4 strongest dolly grips, or grips period, on action, just pushed the whole rig and spun it and turned it. And we moved this whole rig with 3 actors, 2 cameras on it through this space, and had to make sure it had all of our actors. And of course, Richard Cheese is in the background. So it came out a really fun effect. It's a little different than, I guess it's where you've seen it before, and I've always been a fan of it.
Spike Lee
is the Spike Lee shot, but he's always done it going backwards.
Yes.
Denzel moving through the crowd and things like that. Yeah. Here we sort of went the opposite direction, but absolutely inspired by Spike. And I don't know if Spike invented it, but he certainly deserves credit because that's how I know of it. So.
Well, the beauty of a shot like that is similar to kind of what Hitchcock and Spielberg would do with the dolly zoom. It's such an immersive shot. Like it is literally what the characters are feeling in that moment. You actually feel like you've gone away with them in that scene.
Glad to hear that. Yeah, I mean that's always the goal with filmmaking, is like, how do we convey what's what's on the page, on the screen, but also how do we convey what the characters are feeling, emotionally, subjectively, and how can I pull the audience in? So that I'm glad to hear that was effective.
Perfect.
Okay, so you spend the first half hour of this film literally saying out loud to yourself, "What the fuck is this movie?" In the nicest way possible.
Yes.
But the moment,
awesome.
We the moment, set, by the way, Sean, we often were like, "What the fuck are we making?"
Well, I mean, your opening scene, I was dying laughing for people. Yeah. I mean, the kid on the bike is one of the funniest things. I don't know what. Yeah. It's so good.
But the scene where I literally, I was laughing so hard I lost breath, is Jamie Dornan's song with the seagull on a tire. So if you could just talk to me about the songwriting process, because you drop musical numbers into this comedy. It's hard enough to just be funny, as being funny. When you add a musical element, it's even harder. A film we reference on the show so many times is Pop Star. Where the songs are crucial to the narrative, and your songs are crucial to your narrative. Like, can you talk about the songwriting process?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm glad to hear that had the effect we were hoping, that you fell out of your chair where we're laughing so hard. By the way, one of my favorites, we were fortunate enough to get 1 or 2 test screenings of the film before the pandemic hit. So I did get to see this movie with an audience. It was such a joy. In that moment, I remember I was sitting near a guy who sort of, when he walked in, because you just bring in general audiences, and some people are there because they want to see it, some are because they're with a date. And I remember it was this huge guy covered in tattoos, must have been 250 pounds, and he was sort of sitting like this through the whole film for a while, and he was smiling. And then the Jamie Dornan musical number hit, and he was doubled over laughing. And I was like, this is great. Like, we got that. That guy was not down for a minute, and he's fully in. So I'm glad to hear that. But So much credit, obviously, for the music itself is to Kristen and Annie. I mean, they wrote that music.
Oh, no kidding.
When I first sent the script to Jamie Dornan, the script literally has one line that says, "Then Edgar does an emotional dance." That's it. So when he signed on to the film, and we can get into him in a minute, he's so talented and amazing, and he got the film. But that's all he knew. And then he showed up to set, and it was like, okay, so Jamie, here's the 2.5-minute song. You're climbing a palm tree like a cat. You're dancing like a ballerina and singing yourself into the ground, etc. He was amazing and so game. But all those lyrics and so much credit obviously for Chris and Annie coming up with that insane lyrics. But again, it all comes from their style of comedy. I think works because it's like, what are we trying to convey? And really, the truth is, it's a tortured character who's lovelorn. He's so emotional, but it comes out as he's singing to seagulls on a tire or seagulls eating trash. There is a double in there, and I hope you got that. I mean, he's not.
Oh, you can see the double. Yeah. But it made it funnier. It made it funnier that you can see the double's face. Yeah.
That's right. You're supposed to be very clear that it's not Jamie.
Yeah.
In that moment, the rest of it is him.
Okay, Kev, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say. The other day I was filling out my my awards ballot for like the Critics' Choice Awards, and I got to the Best Original Song category, and it just gave me so much pride to write the words "I love boobies" into my professional email that I was delivering to the Critics' Choice. I mean the bar sequence. Every time we go back to that character, I was crying. I was laughing so hard just because of the way he delivers the lines, the way what he says. And I just wanted to ask about that song, filming that moment. Were you dying behind the camera? Because it was so deadpan. The guy was so serious about it. It was perfectly toned.
Yeah, his name is Richard Cheese. That's his stage name. I don't know if I can give away. His real name is Mark Davis, but you can just call him Richard Cheese. He's incredible. The funny backstory of how we got him involved. He's always been written in the script. I mean, it said Richard Cheese. It didn't say like a funny lounge singer sings inappropriate songs. Kristen, I believe, was at like a dinner party years ago, a couple years back, when she was writing the script with Annie, and she brought up how like this really funny guy, Richard Cheese, would be amazing. And sure enough, like at the party is somebody who knew him really well. And so we connected with him. And so we brought him down, and he's so funny in his deadpan delivery. He's got a great voice. He's very funny. He co-wrote some of those songs with Kristen and Annie. And like you, I wanted to keep coming back to him. I mean, I think we only come back to him 3 times, but I think we were trying at some point in the edit for like 4 or 5. But I hope it wins an Oscar. I mean, I know it's really ridiculous, but my brother's an Academy voter, and he forwarded me an email, and it was like, "For your consideration," really proper email from the Academy. And then it says really big, like, "I love boobies." It's like, this is amazing.
My favorite part in that scene is when he goes, "I'm going to take a break." Oh, wait, I'm back.
I'm out. I'll be right back. And I'm back. Yeah. Let's take a short break. And I'm back. Okay. He's amazing.
All right.
I mean, he had so many of those one-liners. And if you haven't, like, do check out his music. He's fantastic. He's really talented. He has all these albums he's putting out. And he's a really talented, funny guy. We feel obviously very lucky to have him in the film.
All right, we're going to transition into some spoiler talk for the film now. So if you're listening to this and you haven't yet seen Barb and Star, please remedy that immediately. Go see it. Skip to the next section of the podcast. But here's where we're going to get into some specifics. I'll ask a really quick one, and then I want to get into my actual question. There's a moment where Gail gets locked out of the talking club, and we never get to see Gail. I'm wondering, is she voiced by anyone famous?
It's a great question. We talked about voicing her by someone famous and or revealing her like at the end of the film, like she finally like is, or she's still outside. She is not, unfortunately. I believe she is voiced. Well, that's not true. She is voiced by someone famous. I believe she's voiced by Annie Mumolo or Kristen. I can't remember. It's one of them just changing their voice a little bit. Saved us a couple bucks right there.
All right, so my actual question is, when I was tweeting the reaction to the movie, I compared it to MacGruber, like I mentioned before, but the other one that I mentioned that I was afraid to even include because I thought it was too revelatory, was Austin Powers. I've not seen someone do a dual role, since that had the kind of ramifications like this, where each of the people that they're playing is a full-on character. So who came first in Kristen's process? Do you know? Like, did she have this idea of this woman who had a vendetta against Vista Del Mar, or did she have this buddy comedy of Midwesterners have to get away?
It's a good question. I think, by the way, in terms of the process of how this whole movie came about, I honestly think they had the title and then they wrote the movie because they liked the title so much, which is really funny. It's like, I don't recommend that for most screenwriters. But you could ask them. I think they've actually revealed that that's really, they love the title Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar. No, it's by the way, I love it, and your point is exactly right. We haven't seen it, and here's what's interesting for me. I don't know that I've ever seen it from a female. Like, it's sort of a tradition. I remember, Peter Sellers did it in Doctor Strangelove, and of course the wonderful Mike Myers did it, and others. But I can't really point to a female comedian doing it where she's the hero and the villain in the same film, and no one can do it as great as the amazing Kristen Wiig. So. I don't know. It's a good question. Who came first in terms of characters? I think they were probably born around the same time. But Sharon Gordon Fisherman, which is one of my favorite names of all time, is quite the character.
Back to Jamie Dornan, obviously. I was telling you this earlier, was that I've had the chance to interview him for a bunch of films over the years, and he's always been super hilarious in interviews, like genuinely just incredibly funny. And so when I saw this film, I'm like, oh, someone really now tapped into that talent that he has. I mean, I think he's a very good actor, and I've loved him in the work he's done, but I think this was really it just felt like he was right at home in this role. And I wanted to ask about what it was you saw in Dornan that made you understand he would be that funny.
It's a great question. I had the exact same experience, by the way. So Kristen, Annie, and I all always right away thought, oh, he could be amazing. Like, if he's capable of being funny, because in his work, you haven't seen it yet because he hasn't done those kind of roles, he'd be incredible. And so I often, when I'm casting, it's maybe a weird process, but I actually really like to watch interviews. I like to watch sort of what are they like naturally, talking to you guys, going on talk shows. And I had the same reaction, which is he's always very funny in a very dry, wonderfully Irish way. But he's got clearly a great sense of humor. So we sent him the script thinking, like, is he going to respond to this? Who knows? And he loved it. And we set up a call, just the two of us. And he and I spoke for probably 2 hours. And instantly I was like, oh, this guy gets it. He's very funny. He understood the character. And, the thing he does, which is, any good dramatic actor should do if they're doing a comedy, is he just fully commits. You don't try to be funny. You don't try to push the joke. Your character is not aware that anything's funny. And so he, you see it time and time again, but when he's doing that emotional dance, he's fully committed. It's not silly, it's emotional. He's feeling how he's lovelorn. And by playing it so straight, then it becomes so funny. I've sort of long had this belief that really good comedic actors, really talented, but almost always are great at drama, and you've seen it with guys like Steve Carell or Jim Carrey. Because to be really funny, generally speaking, you're playing the drama of the scene, but you just know how to make it a little bit funnier. And I think that's a tough thing to do. And so, as soon as Jamie stepped on set, I know Kristen, Annie, and I were all like, oh, he's got it. He gets it. And by the way, to your point, Kevin, his wife at one point came up to me while we were on set or having dinner at some point. She said, this is Jamie. What you guys are doing are like, all his friends know this part of Jamie. It just so happens the first big role he got, he was a serial killer, and then it went from there. So I'm so excited for the world to discover this side of him, because he is such a talent.
The scene that makes me laugh so hard is when they've untied themselves, but they have to keep making themselves look like they're tied up as he monologues.
And he's telling this incredible monologue about his backstory, and he's just not seeing it because he's so in the moment.
So this is my last question, and then Kevin has one more, and then we'll wrap up here. Mine is a very technical question. It's probably very weird. Your Kristen Wiig's villain character is pale, ghostly white, like a Tim Burton-esque, has never seen the shadows. You have to do a very pivotal scene late in the film where she's immersed in water. How on earth did you do that?
Yeah, good question, by the way. Very, very astute technically. First of all, it's one of the obvious challenges, as you brought up, is her skin. And so we are out. And again, I shot all that stuff practically. And I don't even just mean practically like we're in the water. We're in the ocean. When you have actors like Kristen and Annie who are down to do their stunts, I mean, the culotte scene, we rigged them up and we brought them 100 feet up in the air, and then they, floated down. They were on their jet skis. They were in the ocean. So for the villain's character and her skin, it was very difficult. We did have to do some touch-up work afterwards in post to help with the makeup. But as you also might imagine, there's a lot of scenes like that one in the water where both Chris Starr is in the scene opposite Sharon Gordon Fisherman, our villain. And so it sounds so crazy to keep saying her name. All three names. So we obviously had a double, and Kristen would, but on those days, it was incredible to watch Kristen because you have to shoot those at the same day and ideally the same lighting and timing. Because if you wait too long and now the lighting's different, now it's very hard to match shots. So she would just, get out of Star, go become Sharon Gordon Fisherman and pop in the water, and then her entire performance changed. I mean, one of the greatest compliments I think to her is when we did early test screenings, there was so many people that were like, who is that villain? She's so good. I can't put my finger on who the actress is. And that's, I think, such a compliment to her.
That's incredible.
Just the role. My other fun short story about that is we had a guy even working on the film doing some color work early on in the process. He worked on the film for 3 days. Every day I'd check in on him. He said, don't tell me I haven't figured it out yet. I got to go to IMDb. I want to figure out who it is. He worked on it for 3 days and didn't figure out that it was her.
Wow.
We do a couple tricks. We add a little tooth gap like I have here, a little prosthetic on the nose. And obviously she's actually wearing some interesting contact lenses. Right. But the rest of it is just her performance and how she completely goes from one character to the other.
Is it Rainn Wilson in the beginning of the film or no?
No. Okay. I'm sorry. With
the scientist or doctor, scientist who gets killed by mosquitoes. I thought that was Rainn Wilson.
No, the actor is. Oh man, now I'm embarrassed. It's Patrick, and I'm blanking his last name.
That's okay. I swore to my wife it was Rainn Wilson, and she was like, "I don't think it is." I'm like, "No, I'm pretty sure."
No, it's not Rainn, who's an incredible talent. I wish I could tell you Patrick's last name because now I'm very embarrassed because he's a phenomenal actor. And it will come to me, or maybe Amy, if you have it, you can help me out. But I apologize. We're gonna get that before we end this interview, so I can shout out.
Sounds good, Kevin. You're closing us off.
Josh, I think one of the most brilliant things that you do in this movie is that we sit in the awkwardness, and I think that's kind of what makes it. And the scenes that you kept cutting back to with Vanessa Bayer. At the roundabout, like book club. I mean, it is genuinely one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Just her sitting there awkwardly smiling, and then you just cut to whatever scene you're going to. And I wanted to ask you about that as a director, like sitting in awkward moments, like making it almost uncomfortable for the audience in the best way possible. If you know what I'm saying, like where it's like it's such an interesting push pull. Like it's always funny, but you're always like, ugh, and then and then you cut. So I wanted to ask about the timing and the pacing of moments like that, because Vanessa sells it so perfectly, but it's also done in the editing and the design and what comes before it. So I'm just interested to know about that.
Absolutely. No, I think first of all, like just in general, awkward is always a big tool of comedy, right? And the reason being, I think, is we all experience awkward moments throughout our day-to-day lives, and when we see it on screen, that like tension of like, oh God, I know that feeling. It's a release. It's funny. It's like, oh my God, yes, I've been in these scenarios. I mean, specifically to the one you're referencing, I mean, at a minimum, part of what it works is the sort of you're coming out of a crazy loud sequence where the ladies are like rocketing through the ocean on a jet ski, and they're praying to God to open the gates of heaven to let them in because they think they're about to die. They're beelining toward a giant cloud of killer mosquitoes. And then to cut to the silence of what Talking Club is, there's something, I mean, to be honest, it's as like basic as like why babies, sort of laugh at that. There's like something very primal about going from very chaotic to silence, and everyone's just sitting around having their tea. And obviously you find the right length of how long do you sit in that, because there's different schools of thought. There's like, all right, well, this was long enough. We got the laugh, move on. there's other films and moments where you go, oh no, let's just keep going and making it more uncomfortable. And so you find the right balance, and you don't want to completely halt progress of the story you're telling. But if you want to just keep going until really everyone in that theater is laughing, like that's the trick. So it's always it's a dance with how long. But obviously the other reason why that scene exists though is like it's showing you how far they've come, right? Like,
yes.
They're now on this adventure where they're like gonna maybe die, and they're on a jet ski. And where were they? Oh, they were in this insanely boring talking club where people talked about hot dog soup and socks, or whatever it is that the topic of the week is. So there's multiple reasons why it's in there, but yeah, that group.
Oh my God, when their lives flash before their eyes and you see the feet with individual finger socks. That
Dude,
montage is so great.
I haven't laughed this hard in so long. I just gotta say
so
thank you for this movie. I needed this film genuinely, and I mean that my wife and I were dying laughing. So thank you for this.
Yeah. So happy to hear that. I hope it's the right. As a director, I was so excited for this film to be out in theaters all across the country on the big screen. But I'm honestly so thrilled to give everyone this vacation, because we're desperately in need of it right now, I think, as a culture. And so I'm so happy to hear that, and I hope others have the same experience.
And do a series. Like I would watch multiple seasons with these two characters.
I like that. By the way, we always joked around. We're like, what would be the sequel if we did a film sequel? Although a series is a great idea, but we often were like, what about Barb and Star Go Very Far to Mars? And it was like, it's like somehow they make it out for space and they're in Mars. But whatever it is, it has to rhyme. I mean, that's clearly rule number one of what the title is.
Well, clearly there's no pitch that's too far out.
No.
Based on what we just watched. That actor's name, by the way, is Patrick Bristow. Yes.
Patrick Bristow. I love you. You're so talented. I'm sorry that I didn't come up with your name at the top of my head, but thank you for pulling that up, Sean.
You're very welcome. All right. Thank you so much, Josh, for joining us. We will tell everybody in our circle to go see this film and enjoy it many times. We really appreciate your time, and this was a really fun talk.
Thank you guys for having me. This was a blast. And
congrats to you, man.
Yeah, man. Congratulations. It's so funny.
Thank you, guys.
Naturally, we want to thank Lionsgate for giving us time with Josh. You guys have to go check out Barb and Star. If you've made it this far and you haven't seen it yet, hopefully our conversation teased you enough to go get it. Sorry about no episode this week. ReelBlend Premium subscribers, you will get an episode on Monday, February 22nd. So look out for that new episode when it drops. If you are not subscribed to the ReelBlend Premium channel, make sure you hit bit.ly/ReelBlend Premium for additional content from myself and the guys, and we will be back next week with all new content.